Hello, this video will get you up to speed quickly on how to play Yammer. Yammer is a 1 to 6 player game focused on age groups 8 to adult. It's very easy to learn and it's fun to play. Hey, before we get into the rules themselves, let me just get you familiar with the deck. So we have 108 cards in our deck, and there are several different types of cards within the deck. So we have red letter cards, and we have 51 of those. We have orange letter cards, again, 51 of those. We have wild cards, and there's 2 of those in the deck. And then we have multiplier cards, a 2x and a 3x multiplier card, and we have 2 each of those in the deck. Now the object of the game is to be the player with the highest point score at the end of the game, and you score points by forming words utilizing the letters that you hold in your hand and letters that are on the table, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But just to give you an example of how simple our scoring system is, if you built this word here, if you built the word water, as you can see, it utilizes 2 different colored letters. So we've got an orange W and red, the balance of the word. So if you form a word with multiple colors, your score is just the face value of the cards themselves. So this would be a 10-point word, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If you were able to build the word using all the same colors, the value of that word then doubles. So this 10-point word then becomes a 20-point word. Further, if you happen to be holding a multiplier card, you can play that as well at the same time, and that 20-point word then becomes a 40-point word. So you can see the powerful effect of the multiplier. And I should mention the multiplier can only be played on a new word. You cannot play this card on a word that's already on the table. And then finally, I should talk a little bit about the wild card. When you play a wild card, you declare the letter and the color of the card. So if you declared this to be a red R, you still could play the word water, and the word is eligible for doubling. Okay, before you begin play, you need to do a few things. First of all, designate a scorekeeper and designate a dealer, and also make sure you have a discussion so everybody knows what acceptable words are. In our opinion, anything that you would find in a standard dictionary or in common slang would be acceptable. Abbreviations would not be acceptable, nor would words that require capitalization, hyphenation, or apostrophes. But it's very flexible. You can make the rules as you'd like. Now, to begin play, the dealer would deal 4 cards face up in the center of the table. These are cards that are available for everybody to see and to use. And this area here is called the well. The dealer then deals 3 cards to every player, face down, and these cards are not to be shared or shown to other players. And the remaining cards you put next to the well, and this is our draw pile. One thing that I should mention, I mentioned Yammer being a very flexible game. To adjust the difficulty level of the game, you can change the rules where you play with a 2x3 or a 1x4, and also you can vary the number of cards that you hold in your hand. But once you set those ground rules, your object is to maximize your point score by utilizing cards in your hand and cards on the table. So every player has one of 2 options at the beginning of their turn. They could either, if they're dissatisfied with any of the cards that they hold in their hand, they can get rid of 1, 2, or 3 cards, put them in a discard pile, and draw the same number of cards from the draw pile to replenish their hand. Their turn then ends, they don't score any points, they don't build any words, and play passes to the player to the left. More likely than not, you're going to choose option number 2, which is to build a word. Now, looking at what we just dealt, there's quite a few words already on the table just in the well. There's the word this, T-H-I-S. There's ship, S-H-I-P. There's crop, C-R-O-P. There's hip, H-I-P. So there's quite a few words already on the table. And so what I'm going to do, I see I have a red T here. I'm going to create the word port, P-O-R-T. This is an 8-letter word, all the same color, so that 8 doubles to 16. I'm also going to play my multiplier card, so that 16-point word now becomes a 32-point word. So what I would do is I would tell the scorekeeper 32 points, put it on the table for everybody to see, and my turn is essentially over. Now, before I turn it over to the next player, I have to replenish the well, and then replenish my hand. Always replenish the well first, and then play would move along to the player to your left. Now the next player has exactly the same options. They could discard some cards or build a word. The difference is once you get into the game and you have words on the table, not only can players build new words from the cards in their hand and cards in the well, but they could add to words already on the table. For example, we've got the word port here. If somebody had the letters E and R, they could lay those two cards down and score the points for those two cards, and the word on the table becomes porter and no longer port. So a player could not play the letter S and make port into sport because the word on the table is now porter. Play then continues around to the left. After several rounds, you'll begin to diminish the draw pile. If during play the draw pile becomes empty, but you do have cards in the discard pile, take the discard pile, shuffle them, and move them over to the draw pile and continue play. But at some point, the draw pile will be insufficient to fully restock the well and your hand. The game ends when the draw pile is empty and a player has used all of his or her cards, or the draw pile is empty and there are no further plays. In this particular example, I can't build a word out of the letters that I have in my hand and on the board. If other players did not have a play, the game would end. People caught holding cards in their hand at the end of the game would have that point total deducted from their score. So in this example, I have a B and an L. That's 9 points, so I would have 9 points deducted from my score. High score wins. If there happened to be a tie, use the score prior to deducting for cards in your hand to declare the winner. So if you're looking to play a quicker version of Yammer, feel free to take one of the suits out of the deck. So take all the orange cards or the red cards out of the deck and play with half the deck, and the game will go by in half the time. As mentioned, there's also a solitaire version of the game. This is a 1 to 6 player game. So let me show you the solitaire version very quickly. First of all, set up a well like you normally would. Give yourself a draw pile. And select 2 or 3 cards, up to you, however you want to play it. Now in this version of Solitaire Yammer, you can do one of two things. You can either have 2 objectives, either try to maximize your point score from the words that you create off the board, or just try to pull as many words or letters off the board as you can. That's probably the easier version to prevent needing to keep score as you go. But you play as you would normal Yammer. So I see on the board here, for example, we have the word camp. We have the C, the A, the M, and the P. Form the word camp. You then replenish the well and continue on. Now playing solitaire, we've actually been able to use the entire deck. It's got to be very lucky for the letters to fall out that way, but it is possible to play the entire deck. So you'll find a Yammer deck of cards to be a very versatile deck of cards. There's actually quite a few different games that you can play with our cards. Now, we're not going to go into a lot of detail on any specific game here. The instruction sheet that came with your cards actually outlines the instructions for a couple of the games we're going to mention, but they're all very intuitive. So once I tell you what they are, you're going to know what to do. For example, you can play a rummy style game with our cards as well. So what you would do is, in this particular setup, we dealt 9 cards per player. Set yourself up with a draw pile, take the top card to be the first card of the discard pile, and then you would play as you would a normal rummy game, where each player can take either the top card from the draw pile or the top card from the discard pile to build out their hand. Now, the objective of this particular game would be to build a word or set of words that utilize all 9 cards within your hand. Now, the catch is that each word has to be the same color, so you cannot mix different colored letters within a word. And the other catch would be that you cannot use single letter words. You cannot use the letters A or I as a standalone word. So every word has to be at least 2 characters long. So what you'll see here is I've got a hand here that would be, if somebody would have built out this hand, it would have been a successful hand to go out on. There's utilizes all 9 cards. There's 2 words. The word camel, which is all red, and then there's the word test, that's all orange. So if somebody were to build this, they could go out. Now, there are other versions of rummy you can play. You can play a kind of a 500 version rummy. Plays very similar to the basic rummy with kind of 2 major differences. One is you build out words, you lay them on the table, and other players can build on those words. And the second is the discard pile is such that you can actually pick up more than just the top card of the pile. Other games you can play a version of poker. So instead of 1 pair, 2 pair, 3 of a kind of ranking, the player with the high word score would win the hand. And you can also do simple things like kind of word scrambles. This is great for kids who are learning to spell. So you can take a word, scramble the letters, give the cards to your child, and challenge them to unscramble the word back into the unscramble the letter back into the word itself. So there's tons of different games you can play with Yammer. I'm sure you're going to invent some of your own. We encourage you to have fun with the Yammer deck. Thank you very much and enjoy your Yammer cards.